Next News, breaking news.
Anthony Fauci played games with the Senate for 6 months, agreed to testify, then bolted. And now Rand Paul has him cornered with a subpoena and a date he can't spin away. July 29th, 10 a.m., Dirksen. That detail matters. Not next year, not behind closed doors, not another lawyer letter. Dirksen, public, on the record. The same man who barked orders at the entire country from a microphone now wants to dodge questions from one senator who never folded. Fauci thought a vague Biden-era auto pen pardon and a wall of media flattery would keep him untouchable. Well, Rand Paul just blew that fantasy up. And this matters because Anthony Fauci did not operate like some cautious lab researcher caught in a paperwork spat. Anthony Fauci operated like an unelected ruler. He pushed the claims that fueled lockdown, censorship, mandates, school closures, wrecked businesses, and years of attacks on basic American liberty. Now Rand Paul says U.S. taxpayer money funneled through USAID and NIH funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Research, Paul says, likely caused the pandemic that killed millions and cost trillions. And then came the cover-up. Rand Paul asked 3 brutal questions. Did Fauci fund gain of research while telling Congress he did not? Why were records destroyed? And why did he need a presidential pardon? Add Paul's charge that Biden's pardon was unconstitutionally vague, covered 10 years of potential crimes, and got signed by AutoPen without Biden's direct authorization, and you see the machine clearly. Democrat fixers, media propagandists, and Washington elites protected the man whose commands crushed normal American life. July 29th in Dirksen is about whether Americans still have the strength to reject bureaucratic decay. And that same fight pushed me to C60 Evo. See, I've tried hundreds of supplements. Nothing hit like C60 Evo. This Nobel Prize-winning molecule is not just another antioxidant. It works at the cellular level where aging actually happens. My brain fog gone, joint pain virtually eliminated. My wife's skin looks 10 years younger, and my energy feels 20 years younger. The Paris study called it the longest life extension in history. Lab animals live 90% longer. It's 172 times more powerful than vitamin C, and it's worth more than gold per ounce. And it's made in a Houston lab that's been doing it since 1991. Get exclusive savings, more energy, clearer thinking, better skin, and feel young again at c60evo.com/NNN. Use code NNN at checkout. Reject the frauds and pick results. And now, the detail that Fauci can't hide from. Rand Paul did not say Fauci never agreed. He said Fauci finally agreed to appear this month and backed out. That's not caution, that's panic. A man who spent years commanding your church, your business, your child's classroom, and your family gathering suddenly turns timid when the witness chair comes with a microphone he does not control. We're going to pull up all of the reaction because the audience is about to see what this looks like, and the fury is justified. So let's take a look here. We got this from Senator Rand Paul. He said, last week Anthony Fauci notified us he will not voluntarily testify before the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, even though he previously agreed to do so. Therefore, today we have issued a subpoena for him to publicly testify. And here is the picture of Rand Paul signing that subpoena. So he makes it official. Fauci doesn't get to duck the hearing. Now, Catherine Herridge zeroes in on the date and location with the subpoena pointing to July 29th, 10 a.m. in Dirksen. Now, you could take a look. She zoomed in and she was able to break it down. And you can see right there, there is the date, July 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. at Dirksen Senate Office. And that is D-Day for Fauci. So the clock is set. He's got a date with the committee. Next, Young Americans for Liberty sums up what Rand Paul keeps being the one that Fauci just can't shake. Senator Rand Paul is the thorn in Dr. Fauci's side that will not go away, and neither will I. So Paul's allies are cheering because he refused to let Fauci slither away. House Republicans want more than applause. Nancy Mace is calling for an investigation, saying Fauci belongs behind bars. It's something we've been saying for a long time. Dr. Fauci should be behind bars, but at the very least, he needs to be investigated. He lied to Congress. According to new reports, he funded the Wuhan lab with your tax dollars. He tortured puppies. He mishandled the entire COVID-19 pandemic and watched Americans lose everything while he faced zero accountability. This man is not a doctor. He's a fraudster who scammed the American people for years and walked away without a single consequence. It's time he face some accountability. Investigate Fauci is the image that she shared from her office. So she's raising the heat on accountability, accusing Fauci of lying and walking free. Now, Rand Paul lays out how 6 months of talks with Fauci's lawyers ended up with one thing, a subpoena. For 6 months, I've been negotiating with Fauci's lawyers over a date to testify. He finally agreed to appear this month. Then he backed out, so I subpoenaed him. He will testify in July. So after months of negotiation, Paul says Fauci agreed and backed out. Next, he sharpens the case, asking the question, did Dr. Fauci fund gain-of-function research while telling Congress he didn't? Why were records destroyed? Why did he need a presidential pardon? The American people deserve answers, and I'm going to make sure they get them during our hearing next month. Amen, Rand Paul. God bless you. So those aren't small questions. They go straight to what Fauci knew and what he hid. And now Paul taking aim at Biden's pardon itself, calling it vague, overbroad, and signed by AutoPen. And this is the question that we've all wanted to know. Biden's pardon of Fauci is unconstitutionally vague. It covers 10 years of potential crimes, was signed by AutoPen without Biden's direct authorization. That is a direct message from Senator Paul, who is about to drag Fauci before the Senate yet again. And we're going to see Fauci squirm. You see, those pardons are all for everything that Fauci has done previous, not what he is about to do. So if he lies under oath again, then it's over for Dr. Fauci. So if the pardon is shaky, Fauci's legal cover may be weaker than the media wants you to think. Even CNBC's Joe Kernan presses the issue as Rand Paul calls Fauci the face of Big Brother medicine. The mask is finally off.
And he's got pardon going forward, pardon going backwards. I don't know whether those stand up, but 2 years ago, David Sachs, I'm sure you know him, he said this explains exactly how he orchestrated the pandemic, or at least knew about gain-of-function research, and then changed the story. And I tweeted at the time, can someone explain to me why Dems line up to defend this guy? Can you explain why Democrats have lined up to defend Fauci when it was clear as the nose on your face what had happened?
I think he represents Big Brother in public health, the Big Brother that tells you what to do, doesn't give you advice, but commands you and tells you what to do. And the left really is fine with an authoritarian approach to medicine. But to give
So the CNN exchange blows up the Democrats' favorite defense of Fauci. Now James Comer takes it further on Fox Business, saying Fauci ignored warnings, funded dangerous research, and left criminal referrals sitting at the DOJ.
Saying Fauci misused taxpayer money for gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab and then lied about it. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman James Comer. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here. You led a multi-year investigation into Fauci and the origins of COVID. You've also questioned Fauci in a congressional hearing. What is your reaction to this? Would you bring him back in now for more testimony?
Well, this is more evidence of what we already knew. Dr. Fauci lied. He caused a great deal of pain for every American and most people around the world. The decisions that were made by the leadership at the time in America were based solely on what Dr. Fauci was saying, and now we know what we've always suspected, that he completely lied. He lied about funding gain-of-function research. He lied about the origins of COVID. He just continued to lie throughout the entire COVID debacle. You know, the decisions were made about the vaccines. If we had known at the time that this didn't come from a wet market, this was man-made, would that have had an impact on the type of vaccine that Americans were given that we now know probably has caused a lot of health problems as a result of the COVID vaccine? So we already did the investigation, and we already have criminal referrals sitting on the desk at the Department of Justice. The Senate did the same. The Senate Homeland Security also has criminal referrals dating back a year and a half on Dr. Fauci. We also, my committee, the Oversight Committee, did an investigation of the pardon that Joe Biden gave, all the pardons. And we concluded that Joe Biden wasn't at the table. There were no meetings with Joe Biden. The Constitution's clear. The president has sole authority to grant pardons, but there's no evidence that at the time that President Biden was even involved in the pardon process. They were signed by the autopen, but there's no evidence. And that was based on all the depositions we had with all the key people in the White House during the Biden administration. There's no evidence Joe Biden participated in the decision-making of the pardon process. So there's more than enough evidence, and what Tulsi did is outstanding. It provides even more evidence for the Department of Justice to begin taking steps to hold Dr. Fauci accountable.
Yes.
Let's go. So the evidence is already there. DOJ dragging its feet. Next, Dr. Peter McCullough connects Wuhan research to vaccine development and says officials covered their tracks from the start.
Pushing the unproven theory that the COVID pandemic came out of a wet market in China. But then that was EcoHealth Alliance chief Dr. Peter Daszak, a friend of Dr. Fauci, admitting that the Wuhan lab in China was genetically creating, quote, killer super coronaviruses. This is gain-of-function research so as to sell vaccines. EcoHealth Alliance did get U.S. taxpayer money to do this dangerous research. And now former DNI Tulsi Gabbard declassified documents showing the CIA warned Dr. Fauci about a Wuhan lab accident where lab workers did get infected in late 2019. Let's bring in Dr. Peter McCullough. Doctor, what's your take on them talking about this? The documents show a government official under Joe Biden said they saw this video of Daszak talking about inserting spike proteins into viruses to make them super viruses more infectious to bind to human cells. What's your take?
Fauci, when he was talking about the wet lab, he was lying through his teeth. He knew all the while that SARS-CoV-2 was created in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and his influence was enormous through the intelligence community, the academic community.
So McCullough argues it wasn't confusion, deliberate cover-up. Now Rand Paul brings it back to the money trail, saying taxpayer dollars through USAID and NIH funded the Wuhan work. Fauci later denied. Rand Paul on a tear today on X. U.S. taxpayer money funneled through USAID and NIH funded gain-of-function research of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That research likely caused the COVID pandemic that killed millions and cost trillions. Dr. Fauci personally signed off on these experiments, then lied to Congress about it. So Paul is putting Fauci's own approval and the Wuhan funding front and center. Next, Vigilant Fox revisits a warning from 2014 when hundreds of scientists said this kind of gain-of-function research could trigger a global pandemic. Here is RFK Jr.
We're going to take a wild virus and we're going to make it more pathogenic, more virulent, more deadly, and then we're going to develop a vaccine for that. And that's classic gain-of-function research. Why are they doing that? What is the rationale for them doing that? The only real rationale, if you think about it, is to develop bioweapons and then develop a defense to those bioweapons. So that's what they were doing. And Anthony Fauci was given a 68% raise by the military because of these new military responsibilities. He continued to do that to 2014. And that year, 3 of the bugs escaped. In high-profile escapes from 3 different labs in the United States, really deadly bugs escaped or were found in unsafe circumstances. And 300 scientists sent a letter to President Obama asking him to shut down Anthony Fauci's research on gain-of-function, saying that it was highly likely that he would start a global pandemic with this kind of very dangerous research. And President Obama issued a moratorium and shut down 18 of the worst projects by Anthony Fauci, or ordered them shut. In the end, he really didn't shut them. He instead moved the research offshore, where he would be out of the oversight of these troublesome scientists, the 300 scientists, a group that called itself the Cambridge Working Group, and of White House officials. And the major lab offshore that they moved this research, there were other ones too. They moved research to Ukraine, to the former Soviet state of Georgia. But some of the worst research, they moved to a Chinese lab that was run by the Chinese military, the Wuhan lab in Wuhan, the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China.
So the early warnings make Fauci's now look even worse in hindsight. Now Rand Paul closes the loop, saying the media treated Fauci as untouchable for years, but the subpoena is here and the answers are overdue. For years, the media and Washington elites treated Fauci as untouchable, but if you lie to Congress, destroy records, and mislead the public about the origins of a pandemic that killed millions, you shouldn't be above scrutiny. I've issued a subpoena for Dr. Fauci. It's time for answers. And here is Rand Paul on CNBC today.
Switch to Fauci because I can remember seeing emails that were out. It had to be 3 or 4 years ago, where he was trying to convince other scientists to go with the story. We can get by with the natural origin story. It certainly looks unlikely. And they switched their position on what was staring them right in the face. It was like a walking, quacking duck, more or less, that it came from this lab. He convinced them because he knew he had funded gain of function research. And he told you was that under oath, under testimony, that had never happened?
Absolutely. And that's a felony to lie to Congress. And we've gotten more evidence over the last year. From the Biden administration, they revealed nothing. From the Trump administration, particularly with Secretary Kennedy, we've gotten a lot of information. That information has revealed that not only did he lie to Congress, he knew that he was lying to Congress. He knew he was making several continuous and contiguous lies to begin with, but he also, from the very beginning, was destroying records, sending letters and notes to Francis Collins, the head of NIH, saying, read this and destroy this. That sounds more like the CIA talking to each other, but not the executive branch. That's against the law and also a felony. So we've been negotiating with him for material and for a testimony. This has gone on for some time. He slow walked us, finally agreed to come in voluntarily. That would have been this month. And then this week, or last week perhaps, rather, he says he's not coming in. And so we've issued a subpoena. I was able to get subpoena power for our committee last year. And so with the subpoena power, we will bring him in unless he decides to fight it in court. So we'll see what happens. But I think he does need to come in and testify. Look, 15 million people died worldwide, and it was from dangerous research that he funded. What a judgment error. Probably no judgment error equal to this in modern medical history.
And it became
So the moral center of the story sits in one humiliating fact. Anthony Fauci commanded America in public, but when Rand Paul locked in a public hearing, Anthony Fauci ran. He ran after 6 months of lawyer games. He ran after agreeing to testify. He ran even with a Biden-era pardon floating over him like a political shield. Then Rand Paul snapped the trap shut with a subpoena. That's why July 29th at 10 a.m. at the Dirksen Building matters so much. It strips away the costume. The sainted TV doctor turns back into what he always was, a regime bureaucrat who loved power, hid the paper trail, and expected the Democrat machine to smother consequences forever. Rand Paul just ripped that protection away in broad daylight. So here is the line in the sand. If Anthony Fauci walks into Dirksen on July 29th and gets treated like some fragile elder statesman, then Washington learned nothing from the wreckage it helped cause. But if Rand Paul presses the questions he already put on the table, gain of function, destroyed records, taxpayer cash to Wuhan, and that grotesque 10-year auto pen pardon, then the country finally starts clawing back a little justice from the administrative state. President Trump's return already broke the regime's spell in this town. Now conservatives in Congress have a chance to finish a piece of unfinished business the Biden years buried under protection, propaganda, and arrogance. So share this with people who still think Fauci was just following the science. And put July 29th, 10 a.m. right on your calendar. Put it in front of them. Make them look at it. Fauci agreed. Fauci backed out. Rand Paul subpoenaed him. Now let's see if the man who ordered America around can handle one morning under oath. And I want to make sure you get the news that you rely on. I understand your pain. You don't get the notifications that you've asked for from YouTube. So I set up this number just for you, 844-840-4963. Text raw feed, and I'll make sure you get the notifications direct from me. And let's celebrate America 250, shall we? Go to the Next News merch shelf below this video or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.